Thanks for coming. I'm Andy Duncan, in case you hadn't figured that out by now. Hey gang, I wrote a book. That doesn't happen very often. Oh, all right, come in. The Haldemans had the chance in 1994 to stop me and did not.
Your time has come.
Joe's just been biding his time all this while. No, I appreciate it. Everybody hear me?
Yeah.
I appreciate everybody coming. The new collection from Small Beer Press, An Agent of Utopia, New and Selected Stories. There are copies in the dealer's room. Larry Smith, Operation has them. Chris Edwards has them. And Scott Edelman and I will be in the dealer's room signing at 2 o'clock and handing out candy and basically lassoing anyone who walks past and forcing them to at least talk with us, for a few minutes. So if you want to come check out my collection and Scott's new collection that's debuting, you can do that. With my usual keen sense of marketing, I'm actually going to read from something else. Because I'm just so delighted to be in this anthology, which sadly turns out to be, I believe, the last original anthology that Gardner Dozois completed before he died. The Book of Magic, which has stories by John Crowley, Eleanor Arneson, Garth Nix, Tim Powers, Kate Elliott, and other newcomers, including me. And I'm just so delighted to be in this book. The novelette I have in there is titled The Devil's Whatever. And the scene I'm going to read from comes about a third of the way in. Come in, there's some seats around.
There's one right here.
The scene I'm going to read from involves, let me make sure I can follow the time. And I'll just stop when I run out. In this scene, the teenage wonder worker Pearline Sunday, who roams the Appalachians, performing good deeds, sometimes against her will or under duress, has decided she has to pay a call on an old acquaintance, a very unpleasant old acquaintance, on behalf of a friend of hers. And so this picks up where she is trying to arrange a rendezvous. I think that's all you need to know. Meeting at a crossroads was, of course, expected. But the one in the Mississippi Delta, the famous one, had been burned long ago. Tourists. So Pearline went instead to Saluda County, South Carolina, where US 378 and State Highway 391 come together in a roundabout 300 feet across. So unusual at the time it was built that all the neighbors just called it the traffic circle, as if it were the only one. National Guard pilots used to bomb it with sandbags for practice, because from above it looked like a target, as so many things do. Pearline hoped she looked like one as she stood ramrod straight in the middle of the new-mown grass at the center of the circle at noon. She did not appreciate being in the hot, but for a proper meet-up, the clock had to say 12. Everyone knew that. And she certainly did not want to attract the attention of old you-know-who at the other end of the day in the black dark. To make sure she was visible to him, she made herself invisible to everyone else. Well, not so much invisible, that never worked out too well, as just beneath everyone's notice. So none of the troopers in patrol cars and young'uns in school buses and commuters in station wagons who drove around her would pay the least bit of attention to the girl-woman in heavy boots who stood in the grassy midpoint of the traffic circle with a cardboard sign that said in red Sharpie, "Hail Satan!" She stood there and stood there in the heat of the day until everything she had eaten for lunch at the Circle Diner, a fried bologna sandwich with cheese with pig skins and pimento on the side and a big carton of Hickory Hill chocolate milk, started to wear off, except maybe for the pig skins, which would be with her always. And she wished she had brought some bonus bologna with her. But whenever she checked her cathead pocket watch, she saw that it was still noon, and that was a good sign. Finally, all the traffic in the circle drove away in all directions towards Saluda or Batesburg or Prosperity or the lake, and was replaced by no traffic at all. At the moment she realized this, she also registered that the breeze had died, that the leaves in the trees were still, that all the visible businesses, the diner and Buddy's Marine and the VFD, now looked deserted, as no one came in or out. A squirrel in the edge of the nearby grass was frozen in place in midair, as if arrested in mid-jump, and she felt sorry for it. But she knew the squirrel did not have long to wait, because she could hear the devil's car coming from the direction of Batesburg. Again, joke. It was a turquoise 1933 Essex Terraplane 8, the kind the bank robbers had favored, and its running board and headlamps gleamed so you would think detail work was the only job left to the damned. Arlene could not quite make out the driver, so bright was the finish in her eyes. The car went into the circle Widdershins and went around and went around and went around 13 times all told until it pulled to a stop, still in the road, and sat there rumbling. The back door nearest Pearline opened by itself to reveal nothing but a wall of shadow, an utter absence of light. It was like the mouth of a cave or a sewer pipe or a rifle barrel. But Pearline took a deep breath, muttered, "The things I do for you, Petey Wheatstraw," cinched her pack tighter, walked across the grass, and got in. The plush back seat was right comfortable, except for the door that slammed shut behind her without agency, and the dead man at the wheel, whose head lolled sideways. His glassy eyes in the rearview mirror seemed to stare just past her at something awful. Someone had shot him in the temple, and the blood was caked and dry. Riding shotgun was an enormous bloodhound that filled the front seat. His buttocks crowded the driver, and his muzzle fogged the side window. The hound's focus was outside the car. He emitted a low growl. "You leave that squirrel alone, Pearlie." And at that moment, the small critter came unstuck and bounded away into the grass. "Arf!" said the bloodhound. Not the sound of a dog's bark, but the sound of a deep-voiced man yelling, "Arf!" As if that were a command. The driver's flopping dead hand shoved the gear shift into place, and the car rolled forward, picked up speed around the circle, around the circle, around the circle, 13 times until Pearline was nauseated, and the terraplane slingshotted down US 378 toward the lake, the scenery a blur. Pearline sat forward at an inopportune time, just as the dog emitted a long, eye-watering fart, to see for herself the speedometer needle that spasmed at the unmarked right end of the gauge. "Sit down!" yelled the dog, and Pearline fairly jumped back in the seat. Something went thump-thump beneath the car, and Pearline thought sure a tire had blown and she was done for. But no. On the straightaway ahead, as far as the eye could see, small animals dashed into the road from left and right, just in time to be run over. Their broken furry bodies continuously smacked the undercarriage, thump, 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 thump. The car made a screeching turn to the left that tossed Pearline against the passenger door, which was hot like a stove lid. She shoved herself back into the middle of the seat, just in time for a second screeching turn to the right. Pearline managed to brace herself and sit up straight that time, but the lifeless driver slumped forward, his face wedged into the corner between dashboard and door, and never moved again. The bloodhound peered back at her. Drool from his jowls beribboned the back of the seat as he said, "Ain't it a smooth riding car?" "Oh yeah," Pearline murmured, barely audible over the quickening thump, 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 thump. "You know what they say," added the dog, his voice trending louder and more manic. "On the sea it's aquaplaning, in the air it's aeroplaning, and on the road it's terraplaning." He rolled off the seat with laughter, fell onto the brake pedal, and the car stopped dead. With a screech that was mostly Pearline screaming, her hands over her face, certain that in the next instant the car would flip over and she'd be done for. But nothing happened except her scream. And she eventually slacked off, spread her fingers, and looked around to find the car's interior unchanged and the scenery no longer moving. The door through which she had entered now popped open with a hiss of rushing air as if a pressurized seal had broken. From just out of sight in the front seat came the abrupt sounds of ripping and gulping. The dog had begun to eat the driver. Pearline scrambled out of the car and ran blindly, her only thought to get far from the befouled terraplane, and in the process ran 20 feet across a freshly raked dirt yard. She stopped herself just a couple of inches away from the bottommost of a set of plank steps. "Young lady, I do not recommend you set foot on those steps," said a harsh nasal voice like claws on slate. "Less'n you intend to be my house guest till half past eternity." Pearline looked up. Sitting on the wide front porch of a two-story white house with clapboard siding, baked beneath a purple sun and a red sky, were Asmodeus the unclean and the stranger to all, Baphomet the tempter and the final beast and the father of lies, the senior senator from the great state of bigotry and hatred and status quo, the son of the shadows, the prince of air and darkness, the lord of the flies, and of misrule and of this world, plague bearer, light bringer, accuser and adversary, lodestar and Belial, old Massa, old Nick, old Scratch, all these and 1,000 more compressed into a single, unshaven, plug-chewing, undershirt-wearing, wattle-necked, puzzle-gutted little peckerwood. Just enough yellow-white hair left on his bald head to stick out in all directions like a Van de Graaff halo. He sat in a rocking chair and fanned himself with a derby hat, his many titles and responsibilities buzzing around him like a swarm of blowflies. His tiny, close-set eyes, embedded in wrinkles like a pair of snake-eyed dice in a dead man's palm, gazed at Pearline with distant disinterest, as they might have gazed at a dried-out cow patty in the road. He was just plumb awful. But Pearline immediately felt a little better just to see him. She had known his type long since, and was no longer afraid. She did, however, make a little curtsy, being ever mannerly and nobody's fool. "I appreciate the warning, sir," she said, "but I'm a little surprised you gave it." "My magnanimity surprises me too," the devil said, "but I reckon we're all a mass of contradictions." "Take you, for example, Miss Sunday. You look like the Sabbath for which you are named, or like its popular conception, at least. All cream and strawberries in an unchipped bowl. And yet you must be at least half full of live bait to survive the trip to my lake house in the first place." His jumbled, dark-stained teeth gleamed in the wrongness of the sun. "I don't believe I caught your name." "You just said it," Pearline replied. "Did I now? That was so long ago I can't remember." I don't think you've given it to me, though. Not handed out freely, pink and squirming in your hand. You've yet to give me anything like that. I'll skip ahead a couple of paragraphs. To where? I should have marked this. It would help. I bought them anyway. This is professional show business. Do you remember me now, old mini-shaped? She asked him. The devil's chair was placed for maximum annoyance on the sweetest spot of a creaking floorboard, which voiced its torment each time the devil rocked forward. How about that, the devil said. Creed? Ain't that something? Creed? Well, my, Creed. This went on for a while until Pearline got impatient. How long you gonna rock there, she asked, and not answer my question? Sometimes it's more diplomatic, the devil said, just to make noises with your mouth and say nothing at all. And be careful what you ask me, little girl. You might not like the answer. But the fact is that I don't seem to recollect even one little teeny-tiny bit of this fairy story you are telling me. He shook his head and scratched his balls. Gals are so big for their britches these days. I blame literacy. They start looking at the pretty dresses in the woman's home companion, and next thing you know, they're sounding out the words too. Etc. The devil is just plain awful. And we hear enough of that in election season, right? Skip ahead a little. Let's see. So, Miss Sunday, what's this holy unearned favor of favors you got in your IT? What you want from me other than the right to live to see your next time of the month? I want you to release Petey Wheatstraw. The devil went very still, and every window in the front of his fine house shattered. I don't believe I know the name, the devil said, as glass shards fell and smashed all around. You do too, he married your daughter. I got lots of daughters, the devil said. They all whores and hair lips. They got lots of husbands and wives too, if you define the terms broadly in a common law way. You got only one as powerful as Petey Wheatstraw, Pearline said, enjoying the way the devil winced at the repetition. That's why you put him on the old crooked track. Locked to all the locations that are named for the devil all over the country, because you were scared of him. You are so full of shit, the devil said. And believe me, I should know. Where'd you say he is, your friend, what's his name, this Peter Dickstraw? He's everywhere named for the devil, 1,000 places, but nowhere else. He's confined to those places over and over, in all time periods, all over the world. The devil shook his head. Not the world, honey. Only the United States. Don't you know nothing? That's the extent of my jurisdiction. I got no authority outside the United States at all. This stopped Pearline short. Her jaw dropped. Why ever not? Asked Pearline. The devil shrugged. Don't ask me. For whatever reason, y'all are the last Satan-fearing nation on earth. But, Pearline said, but the devil shook his head, made a claw-like gesture of dismissal. Honey, I do not make the rules, remember? That's why I quit heaven in the first place. But as for your friend Pecker Woodsman, why shouldn't I keep him just where he is? Well, it ain't fair, Pearline said. Not as handsome as he is, and as smart and as kind. Not when he's so well placed to do so much good in the world, with all his powers and all he has learned from you through the years. She went on in this vein for some time, and enjoyed the devil's growing discomfort, the angry flush on his cheeks. Oh, now mind you, he's done a lot of good already right there on the old crooked track where you put him. Why, at Devil's Den on the Gettysburg battlefield, he consoles the wounded and brings them water and is ever so helpful. At the Devil's Punch Bowl in Oregon, he dips out drinks for everyone like the thing is bottomless. And I don't know what he spiked it with, but old enemies who ain't spoken to one another in decades while they hug and make up and show each other photos of the grandbabies. And at the Devil's Courthouse in North Carolina, he hands out pardon after pardon, forgives every sinner in the place, the defendants and bailiffs and judges and even some of the lawyers, and just wipes the slate clean. By now the devil was sky purple with rage, hunched over like a whistle pig as he gnawed splinters out of the arm of the rocking chair, his eyes like twin 8-balls spinning in the pockets. I mean, Pearline continued, Petey Wheatstraw plumb does everything he can, and if he keeps at it another century or so, why, your name will stand for nothing but goodness and mercy all across the map. But just think how much more he could do if... Silence, roared the devil, in a voice that cracked the post that held up the porch, rearranged into obscene designs the dirt of the yard, and busted the radiator in the terraplane. Over the hiss of the leak and the bloodhound's panicked barks, the devil said, so that's what he is up to, is he? I'll cut out his gooslam, I will. He stomped to the front door, hitched up his breeches, and yelled through the screen, hey, middle management! Get your useless business school asses out here! In moments, a dozen cubicle dwellers, all in ill-fitted gray suits, too large for some, too small for others, tumbled through the doorway and cowered before the devil, wringing their hands, each face a rictus of abject subservience and eagerness to please. They were men and women both, black and white and brown, and though they were not literally kissing the devil's hind knickers, Pearline had no doubt they would, and more besides if he just said the word. The devil turned to face Pearline, happy again, and waved his hand at the whole miserable lot. Multicultural as the day is long, the devil said. I used to run a segregated shop, but you got to change with the times. He spat a long plume of tobacco juice onto the nearest cubicle dweller's shoes. Besides, he said, I like to think of myself as a progressive. The Book of Magic from Bantam. Joe Burlett used to accuse me of not only reading stories that I did not finish in person, but that were unfinished and indeed perhaps never to be published. But this one is actually finished and in print now. So, but Scott and I will see y'all in the dealer's room this afternoon and anywhere else. I'm happy to say hey. Thanks for coming. Thank you.